Wow. Hi. Yeah, I was looking at the order of service, and that was Bonnie Parker just saying?
Yes.
Gutsy having Bonnie Parker do the offertory. If you don't know what that means, then just ask somebody who laughed. And Bonnie, don't be mad at me. I'm sorry, you probably heard that 1,000 times, so leave me alone. Bonnie and Clyde? Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
gotcha.
Oh, yeah. It's like, what do you have against Bonnie? She's really sweet. Nothing. Good.
We're good.
We're good. Hey, it is so good to be back. And good to see all of you. Oh, I just got to get this to stand-ups. No, not only am I going to break this, but I'm going to steal your little Amy again, too. Oh, don't break this one? Oh, because the last one broke? Okay, then we'll just leave it like this. I don't want to break anything. I used to be a stage manager, and if you break something that belongs to a musician, it's like you're done. Oh, you're going to give me a different one. There you go. It was hard to get musicians to carry things. If they played the piano, they would carry a piano by themselves, if it was their piano. Otherwise, you couldn't get them to carry a mic cord. Okay, there we go. Okay. All right.
I get that.
And then don't step on the cords and stuff, right? Yeah. We're still on the cord right there. I'm just going to preach from over here next to the guitar. Yeah, I should sing. Yeah, there you go. Strangers in the night. Yes, we're good. We're good, thank you. Oh! All right, we're gonna get this out of the way over here. Boy, by the time I'm done moving stuff, we'll just do an altar call and go. All right. That was good. All right. Today's message is called the Tyranny of the Urgent, or Tyranny of the Urgent. Tyranny of Unmet Expectations. Tyranny of the Urgent was a book. Tyranny of Unmet Expectations. And I think more people have fallen away from God and left the church due to unmet expectations than the direct influence of the devil. People come in, they expect certain things. Those people should all love me. And it's like, yeah, but you don't love anybody, and maybe there's a bunch of people here like you. Oh. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to, well, that church hurt me. And it's like, well, tell me about it. It's like, that was a self-inflicted wound. Unmet expectations. We just read the beginning of the story of Joseph. It goes from chapter 37 to chapter 50 of Genesis, all the way to the end of Genesis. And it's an incredibly powerful story. And I keep harping on real people, real life, real time. And if we just read this again like it's a fable, then it really does us no good. It's like, well, you know, what should I do? Well, don't have lousy brothers, and you should be good. And what are you doing serving a God who seems like he really has it out for you? You should have quit a long time ago. The lessons we can learn from this, if we read it like it's a biology textbook, just kill us. But if we stop, if we show up in the life of Joseph, something begins to happen because we start realizing that Joseph's story is sometimes our story. Now, anybody of a certain age who says, yeah, you know, my life has been one unfettered leap forward after another after another. It's been all sunshine and roses. So that's a bunch of you guys. Well, the 4 other people here, I want to talk to you then. But Joseph ended up going through a lot, and it's interesting reading the story of Joseph. Joseph is one of my favorite characters in the Bible, especially the Old Testament, because he's one of 2 people, major characters, about which God has nothing negative to say. Joseph and Daniel. And you're going, what's the big deal? I mean, they're Bible stories, of course. Read about everybody else. Moses was a murderer. Paul, who knows how many crimes he committed, was a party to murder. Jacob I can't get into going all of Jacob's problems. But you read about person after person after person in the Old Testament, and the cool thing about the Bible is it's always warts and all. He always said, God always tells us, man, this is where this person screwed up. This is where this person got a black eye. This is where this person betrayed. This is where this person failed. And we can learn from those stories. But now we got a guy about which God has nothing negative to say, and it would be easy to go, I can't learn from that story. But we can. And I'm going to run through the life of Joseph fairly rapidly and contextualize a little bit so that we can understand how Joseph's story can mean something incredibly powerful to us. So many of us have had to deal with unmet expectations. Some of us have been disappointed with God. Some of us have been mad at God. If I ask you if you've ever been mad at God, there's enough people in here that have been around church long enough to go, well, of course I've never been mad at God. Baloney. And all manner of cold cut. I can remember going out to a place in the hills near where I grew up. And I would get off working my third job, which was at an arcade. And I can remember going out there after 11 o'clock at night and have these yelling matches with God. And then periodically, like a deer would come by and I'd be quiet, and there was this mountaineering and all that stuff. And I've told people about this, weren't you afraid you're going to get hit by lightning? It's like I'm the first person that's ever complained. When I was a new believer, people said, Doug, if you're upset about something, go read the Psalms. Anybody ever tell you that? Go read. Did you ever read the Psalms? Lord, break their teeth. There's comforting right there. God, destroy my enemy. That was in Psalm 63 that we just were introduced to part of. And I loved it. It was like, I am hacked off, I get to read the Psalms, and David was hacked off. Yes! My kinship with David. He spends half the time glorifying God, and the other half of the time complaining. I don't know if I've got this thing going right. We'll see. Okay, can you hear me all right? Okay. So Joseph, he's 17 years old and he has a couple dreams. He's his father's favorite son. He is number 11 of 12 boys. And he was born to him by his favorite wife. There's a subject that needs to get addressed, but we can't do it now. And in his old age, Joseph was his favorite. He made him a special robe. It says in the Bible, ornate. In the King James Version, it says a many-colored robe. They don't know exactly what that word means, except it was cooler than the rest of the kids had. That's all we know. So they hated him, because Dad loved him best. They hated him. And they treated him accordingly. Did you ever notice how much bad parenting there is in the Bible? Wow. So Joseph, he's 17 years old and he gets these two dreams. And the first one, basically, his brothers understood when the sheaves come together and bow down to his, that they were going to bow down to him. Well, the way that inheritance worked in that time is that the oldest son became patriarch when the father died. That would mean that 10 other guys had to die in order for him to become patriarch of the family. And they're going, no. Saint Happening, who's my favorite saint. Saint Happening. So he tells them his dream, and naturally they're pleased. Oh, Joseph, that's so wonderful. That is sweet. What a treat to know that we're all going to die or you're going to rule over us. We are so glad that you mentioned it. We can't wait to be under your tutelage. Then he had another dream. people go, Joseph was arrogant to share his dreams. I don't know, if I've got a dream from God, I want to share it. And in that one, the moon and the sun and 11 stars bow down to him. In other words, mom and dad are going to bow down to him too. There is no way in that culture that that's going to happen. So Joseph tells them this stuff, and they hate him. So he goes out to check on the flocks, and his lovely brothers say, here comes that dreamer. They say, we're going to kill him. So they take him and they throw him into a cistern, which is a well. Could have been a dry well, could have been a wet well, we don't know. But they threw him in it. And his good brother, his kind brother, decides, I'm not going to let them kill him, I'm going to sell him into slavery. How would you like that to be your good brother? You think you got problems. So he gets sold into slavery. He's taken by Midianite traders down into Egypt. He is sold into the house of the captain of the guard, who was an incredibly important official to Pharaoh, like chief of staff to the military or whatever. Big deal. So Joseph gets these two dreams. His brothers want to kill him. What'll that do to your head? And then his good brother sells him into slavery. He now has new food, a new name, new clothing, new haircut, new language, everything ends up in Potiphar's house. But the blessing of God is on him in such a way that he rises to prominence in Potiphar's house. And then Potiphar's wife notices him and says, hey, cookie. She makes a run at him. And then another one, then another one, then another one, until finally she gets him alone, and he's like, this ain't happening. So he runs away, she grabs his outer cloak, and he runs out. The scripture says naked. I don't know how naked he was, but naked enough. He runs out. She is like, I'm done with you. Goes to her husband and says, he tried to rape me. So now he gets thrown in prison. Now, at any point, if this is you and me, if we're inserting ourselves in the story, are we saying, hey, God, thanks for the dreams. This has been great. When you gave me those dreams, this is exactly what I expected would happen. You tell me I'm going to rise to this place of prominence. I get threatened with death, sold into slavery, and accused of rape. Yeah! Thanks! Can't wait to see how this turns out. And this is us who pace back and forth because it takes 4.5 minutes to cook our turkey dinner in front of the microwave. This is taking years. And at some point, humanly speaking, does Joseph ever go, you know something? I'm done. We don't have a record of it. But it's okay, because things get worse. He gets accused of rape, he gets thrown in prison, but God's blessing is on him in such a way that just like he did in Potiphar's house, and technically he's still working for him, the captain of the guard, he rises to prominence, he's running the prison. But it's okay, it gets worse. The baker and the cupbearer to Pharaoh get thrown in prison. Each of them has a dream. So who can interpret our dreams? Joseph tells the baker, curtains for you, buddy. Tells the cupbearer, you're going to be restored to a place of prominence. But when you do, remember me. I am here, I am innocent, I'm helping you. You are the cupbearer in the presence of the Pharaoh all the time. Remember me. In the original language, he said, get me out of here. or something like that. I don't speak Egyptian, I have no idea. So the baker gets executed, the cupbearer gets restored to a place of power, and Joseph's thinking, this is my ticket out. And the guy forgets him for 2 years. You think it's been bad up until now? Joseph's going, what did I do? Yeah?
You're fantastic job. I'm just going to kind of...
Okay, yeah, I'm having trouble with that. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you. Soft, isn't it? Yeah. Boy, if somebody listens to the tape instead of watching the video, they're going to go, what just happened? Why did they start talking about his hair? What was that other voice? Why does it sound so uneven? Joseph, right? Okay, yeah. So the guy's restored to a place of power. Joseph thinks this is my ticket out. The guy forgets about it for 2 years. How do you forget about that? How do you forget about that for 2 years? How about now? Now does Joseph go, I'm done. I have had it. I had those dreams and all that stuff. It has brought me nothing but misery. And then after 2 years, Pharaoh has a dream. And nobody can interpret it for him. And then 2 years later, the cupbearer goes, oh, I blew it. I know a guy. I have been remiss in my duties. They cost him 2 years of his life. Me too. That's exactly how he felt. But why is the guy yelling? I don't. So he gets called in before Pharaoh, interprets the dream, and basically says, look, there's going to be, what God's telling you is there's going to be 7 years of plenty. There's going to be 7 years of famine. You need to take 20% of everything, all the grain, all the food that's done. Save 20% of it every year the first 7 years, and then you have food to get you through the next 7 years. And then, well, who should do this? Who should rise up and administrate this? And Pharaoh goes, I think you should. I think you should, Joseph. And makes him prime minister of Egypt. And the only person that he answers to is the Pharaoh. That's it. That's it. That is the only person he answers to. In other words, he becomes the second most powerful person in the most powerful country known on the planet at that time. He's now 30 years old. 13 years since he had his dream. 30 years old. But this isn't the answer to his dream. He just comes to a position of prominence. Then they have 7 years of plenty. He administrates it. All this food is saved, stored in Egypt. Now he's 37 years old, and say a couple years later, when the famine really kicks in, is after you've used your seed grain. So let's say they're 2 years into the famine. Now he's 39 years old, and his brothers show up. And I'm not going to go into that whole story, but eventually he ends up reuniting with his brothers after having a little fun with them. And he doesn't kill him. He's not mad at him. He said, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. And he's finally getting his 13-year journey through hell was to prepare him to save his family and save the lineage of the Messiah. He's 39 years old. 22 years since he had his dream when he sees his brothers. And maybe a year or two after that, after he sees his family, and they come down to Egypt to live, and he makes a place for them. The best of Egypt. He's somewhere in excess of 40 years old after getting a dream when he was 17. You want to talk about unmet expectations? Joseph is a study in unmet expectations. And I want to look at a little bit of what we can learn from Joseph We have to learn from what he said. We have to learn from what happened to him. And in some cases, we have to learn from his silence. What do we do when we're dealing with confusion and disappointment? What do we do? How do we get through that? What can we learn from this? Because in all honesty, how many of us during those 13 years especially would have gone, God, I am done with this. I am done with you. I'm done with this whole charade. I'm done with the stories my father told me. I am done. How many of us? And how many of us have had that conversation with God on one level or another for a lot less than this? I didn't get that job. God must have deserted me. I got lost on the way. God must have deserted me. I had an argument with a family member. God must have deserted me. I had a kid one time come to me. She was 14, 15 years old. And she'd become part of our youth ministry some years ago. And she said, I want you to know this is my last Wednesday night. I said, I'm sorry to hear that. Are you moving? She says, no, I'm mad at God. Okay, so she knows there's a God to be mad at. That's progress. I said, why are you mad at God? She goes, I prayed that God would spare the life of my great-grandmother, and he didn't. I'm done. And I said, how old was your grandmother? She said 90, or great-grandmother. She said 94. Yeah, I tried not to laugh. I said, your great-grandmother was 94. I said, what are you, like 14? I said, you know, her life expectancy was 80 years. You wouldn't have even known your great-grandmother if God hadn't allowed her to live to 94. So instead of cursing God and being mad, you should be thanking God that he allowed to know this woman who had such a huge impact on your life that you're willing to walk away from everything. She stayed. But how many of us, we either actually walk away from God? How many people do you know? In this valley, how many disaffected Christians are there? That's the low-hanging fruit. They just need to know that they're forgiven. They need to know they already believe in God because they're mad at him. And they need someone to come alongside and say, you need to forgive. You need to forgive others. You need to forgive yourself. Well, that church hurt me. That church can't hurt you. Maybe some idiot in that church hurt you, but the church can't hurt you. Well, what happened? Well, this happened, and that happened, and this happened. Let me tell you about Joseph. You had a bad day. Let me tell you about 13 years of Joseph. But here's some thoughts I want to leave you with. You take notes if you want. There's 9 points to this. I'll go through them quickly. To make up for it, next week's sermon will be pointless. Maybe that didn't come out right? How do we deal with confusion and disappointment? To say to yourself, I don't know what's going on, isn't the end, it's the beginning. I don't know what's going on. Okay, that's the beginning of an adventure. I've had people tell me before, Doug, you need to get your ducks in a row. I test out as an artist. I don't do art, but I test out as an artist. I don't have my ducks in a row. My ducks are on adventures. They're going and looking over the edge. One of them's in the pond. One of them's flirting with falling down the grate. A couple of them are exploring somebody else. What's their ducks in a row? Praise God for people who have their ducks in a row. But my ducks come back and give me a high wing and say, "You will not believe what I discovered." Next time somebody says they have their ducks in a row, you're going to go, "I am so sorry." How do we deal with confusion and disappointment? We need to realize that not knowing what's going on is the beginning of your next adventure. It's the beginning of what God's wanting to do. See, here's the deal. If you remember nothing else about today, I want you to remember this. God is always at work. And we've sometimes heard that before, but I don't know on a day-to-day basis how much we believe that. God is always at work, all the time. How can God always be at work on my behalf? What's with my behalf is worse than their behalf? He's God, you're not. He knows how to do that. I have no clue. If one person's needs seem to conflict with another person's needs, I'm like, I don't know what to do. God, however, has planned ahead. And he knows what to do because Joseph had no idea what God was doing for 13 years. But, point number one, he knew God. Once you know God, there's no denying it. You can get mad at him, you can refuse him, you can yell at him. But you're yelling at him. You're mad at him. And if you think you're the first person that's ever been mad at God, I got news. If you think you're the first person, no, if I yelled at God, I'd get hit by lightning. Well, you might. I have no idea, but plenty of people haven't. And a lot of people have been hit by lightning that they didn't expect. Like God going, yeah, that ticks me off too. Let's yell together. Number one, we must build a connection with God, a foundation. Joseph had that. He knew God. He couldn't deny God. He knew God. He was stuck. He was stuck. It's like knowing this building's here. I'm going to deny that. It's like denying gravity. If you know, you know. You can be mad at him. You can do whatever. But if you know, you know. And that was the foundation he had. That's the foundation we want to build into our children. And that's the foundation we need to seek in ourselves. And you say, no, I'm struggling with that. Okay, ask God to help. Well, I don't know if I believe in God. That's all right, he believes in you. Ask him. God, I'm struggling. Ask him. See what he does. And don't put your timetable on it. Don't you dare. All right, God, I want you to do this, 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 and this. Well, who's God then? God, I'm struggling with this. God, I'm struggling with the existence of you. God, I'm struggling with what's going on in my life. I don't understand. Okay, it's a great place to start a conversation. Ask him about it. Knowing the who is more important than knowing the what. We want to know what's next. But the fact is, what we need to know is who's next. It's him, and you, and me. Number two, we must believe that God is good. Read this in the Bible, God's good. And I've heard people say that before. It's a great religious saying, isn't it? God is good. And then everybody answers back all the time. And then I answer back all the time, and you go,
God is good.
The question is whether we believe that or not. Can God be good to all of us all the time? Especially when we don't know what he's doing. God being good may have been taking a 94-year-old woman to himself when she passed away. I've had to acknowledge that my good God may at some point, in order for me and to accomplish his purposes, he might want me dead. Try that one on. Oh wait, this is God's idea of good, not mine? Yeah. Only his is perfect and ours isn't. He knows what's around the bend, we don't. Do we believe that God is good? That needs to be foundational to us. Does God, because he's God, have the ability to do good by you and you and you and you and you, even though you may have conflicting needs or desires or wants? And the answer to that is yes, he does. Why? Because he's a sovereign God who will accomplish his purposes. And he desires good because he is the embodiment of love. This is Theology 101. And it's like, I struggle with that, Doug. Then ask him to help you unstruggle with it. Especially if your life has been checkered by disappointment. Wouldn't it be interesting? I bet you that Joseph had his enemies when he became prime minister. Bet you he had his enemies, and I bet you there were people that didn't know his story that go, how come he has all the luck? How many times have you looked at somebody and thought, how did they get there? And you do not know the hell that they went through to get there, or the preparation they went to get there, but you're still jealous of them. And how many people have looked at you that way? And most of you in here, if you're not battling with humility, would go, I don't know how anybody could look at my life and say that. But the fact is, there are people that do. I've had people come up to me and, you are so lucky, this, that, and the other thing. They have no idea. We need to read our names in the book. We need to stop talking about God like He's not in the room. Our talents, gifts, our history, our very lives point towards God's purpose in our life. I'll give you 2 illustrations, and then the rest of it I won't tell any stories so we can get out of here before midnight. Out of here by 11:30 easy. The next 11:30. My mouth. My mouth got me most of 209 referrals when I was in school. You heard my story. My mouth got me in so much trouble. My parents didn't know what to do with me. The school didn't know what to do with me. My teachers wanted to kill me. I was just problematic all the way up and down. Up one side and down the other. My God had gifted me with the gift of gab and with connecting with people. And we'd get together and, hey, I got an idea. And then we'd go get in trouble. Isn't it interesting? You know what I do now? You know what I've done for the last years since I got saved? I use my mouth to communicate people and the, hey, God, and I got an idea to be a youth pastor for 29 years and then to pastor a church. Isn't that the kind of person you want pastoring a church? I was operating in my gifts before I ever got saved. They were going to land me in jail, but I was operating in them. That's what sin does. You have talents, gifts, and abilities. You've talked to people, go, yeah, I don't really go to church anymore. I don't get much out of it. You know, the sermons, this and that. Well, if you've been going to church for 25 years, what do you expect every sermon to sound like? Brand new? What do you want us to do? Make up scriptures? Of course you're going to know some of this stuff. That's the point. But people go, well, you know, I'm not getting that much out of it. I was at church one time, one of the adults came to me and said, you know, we're thinking of leaving, I just don't feel like I'm getting fed. And I said, how long have you been here? 28 years. And I said, you can't feed yourself? If my child's 28 years old and can't feed herself, I'm thinking, something might be wrong. I said, maybe you're not here for you. Maybe you're here because somebody needs you. That's what I tell people that go, you know, I don't go to church anymore. There's nothing there for me. No, you're there for somebody. Somebody needs you. Not this cynical, ugly you, but they need the you that's submitted to Christ. And they need to find somebody who can mentor them, who can teach them, who can help them navigate the junk that you've already navigated, to share the word with them that you already know, which is why that sermon wasn't a big deal to you, because you already know it. I don't normally yell, but a little excited. Come on, people. You know, so if you've got one of those friends, pull that on them next. Maybe you're not there for you, maybe you're there for somebody else. Oh? This isn't about me. No, it's about your responsibility under God. God thinks you're far along enough to mentor somebody else. Oh, I was kind of ticked off at him. Yeah, he knows! So go back to church. Well, don't do everything perfect there. That's all right. You don't do everything perfect either. You'll be in great company. They're a bunch of hypocrites. You'll be in great company. You're a hypocrite. Say one thing and do another. We're a gathering of hypocrites. I mean, seriously. See, now you're going, oh, man, that one's not funny, Doug. We're a gathering of hypocrites. Why? Because who is our example? Anyone? Jesus Christ. How many of you lived up to that one? Hands? I've got a couple back there. I'm kind of kidding. Now everybody's going to, who's that? Who's that guy? I can tell you one more story and then I'll get through the rest of my points. And it's along those lines that people don't know what you're going through. And this is just a little bit of my story. You can't tell by looking at me, which you can tell I don't want to look at you, but you can't tell by looking at me, but I was born with 8 major birth defects. Both ankles, both hands, my back, and both hips. And number 8 was I was born with my feet out like this, Charlie Chaplin style. And the first 2 years I was alive, I had to wear these braces on my legs. They had to lace them all the way up. They're called Johnson Brown splints or something. I don't know. There was a Johnson in there or a Brown in there. I don't know. But they were braces on my legs. I was never supposed to walk normally. That's the doctor. Doctor told my mom, he will never walk normally. Well, I ended up not only becoming an athlete, I became a successful athlete. And once a coach taught me to run, I became one of the fastest guys on the team, even though I was 225 pounds. You go, Doug, is this a humble brag? No, it's about pain. Because there were times when I got hit and I would have a hip kind of go out of socket. And the coach would have to pick me up by my belt and drop me so the hip would go back in. It hurt. My hands only go back this far. See, there you go. People always do that. It's like, hey, I can do this. It's like, is that normal? I don't know. Some of you are wondering right now. And then I had something in my ankles that caused, I have incredibly flat feet, like Donald Duck flat. And we found these out bits and pieces. But here's the cool thing about all this stuff. My parents never told me as I was growing up. They found out bits and pieces. They didn't tell me. They never once said, when I said, this hurts, they never once said, well, listen, there's something wrong with you. You're good, so just, it's all right. They never said that. I didn't find this stuff out until I was like a senior in high school. It was like, just, you can do this. Well, maybe a sophomore in high school. You just do this. And again, bits and pieces, bits and pieces. It made sense why I couldn't do certain things when I was in PE and all of that. And the deal is, it causes a lot of pain. My doctor at Kaiser said my average pain, my chronic pain, is about a 4. Now again, I'm not saying this to make you feel sorry for me or anything else. The cool thing is this, is my parents never let me use it as an excuse. Now I don't know what your theology is regarding healing. I've been miraculously healed where there is no other explanation that I know of 3 times. And I'm not even talking about my heart thing. I could blame that on the doctors. I think God healed me, but blame it on the doctors. But there are 3 times in my life when there was no other excuse other than the supernatural move of God in healing me. And some of you are going right now, man, I'd like to get some of that. Yeah, I don't get it all the time either. But I know that God does that. So, one time, I am praying again about my birth defect. God has caused me a lot of pain. I can't do this and I can't do that. And finally, God spoke to me. He says, does that happen to you all the time? No, it doesn't happen to me all the time either. But God spoke to me and said, Doug, those birth defects made you who you are. Yep. This is the last I want to hear about it. Because when I was in school, and I was trying out for the baseball team after my sophomore year, so I knew about this my sophomore year. I ended up getting cut from the baseball team. I wasn't the best guy on the team, but 7 or 8 guys deep, I was. I was a shortstop on the championship Pony League team and stuff. I could play. Coach cut me. And I went up to ask him about it. And I said, what's the deal? You know, it's like, this is going to mess up your career if you don't have the best players out there on the Frost-Off baseball team. You'll never get it to pros like this. Yeah. Naive. So I said, what's the deal? And he goes, Doug, I just didn't think you were putting out. And I said, are you kidding me? And this guy had dinner at our house regularly, or periodically, I should say. I said, you know my story. I have to try twice as hard as everybody else just to keep up. And he goes, that's your problem. My problem is that I try twice as hard as everybody else? He says, no, your problem is you just want to keep up. This is done. I was humiliated. I was humiliated in front of the other guys. I was humiliated in front of my girlfriend. I was humiliated. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because that's what gave me the guts 2 years later to come to Christ. Because I weathered that. Now nobody knows. You can't see any of this stuff. It's like that Doug, he's up there jumping around like a maniac. You can't see it. And you don't need to feel bad for me. I am thankful for this. Because it made me who I was. I would have just been another one of the guys. And those guys had talent. I needed to work twice as hard anyway. But can anybody see this? Does anybody know? No. When I was successful, were there people that were like, your dad was president of the Boosters Club, so that's how come you got to do this? Well, I heard that one before. That was fun. We don't know what people went through. So what we can do is we can go to God, we can believe that He's good, and ask Him to help us believe that. Number 3, we must adapt to changing circumstances. This is huge. Joseph was exposed to new language, new customs, new name, new food, new home, new relationships, everything. We need to stop asking for a way out and ask for a way through. This church is at a transition point right now. We need to ask for a way through. What's this going to look like in the future? This wasn't all about Pastor Jeff. Again, who I don't even know. But meeting you guys, he must have been pretty terrific. But you're in a time of transition. Someone comes talking to you and says, man, I'm out, or I quit, or things aren't like this, or things aren't like they used to be. Don't ask for a way out, ask for a way through. Step in, make it better. Step in, add your expertise, add your life. Well, they don't do what I tell them to do. Ooh. Are you offering or are you ordering? We must adapt to changing situations. I won't ask for a show of hands, but if I did, half the congregation, how many of you adapt well to change? How many of you like change? And most people are just like, yeah, I do not like change. I used to think I love change because of my guts. I love change. But you know something? I loved change when I instigated change. But when somebody else did, I was like everybody else. Nah, doesn't sound good. Number 4, we must show faith rather than anger. We have no record of Joseph turning on God or giving up. However, what must Joseph's conversations with God, his prayers have been like? If Joseph had anger, did he unload on God? Number 1, I bet he did. And number 2, I bet he did. I think Joseph was ticked off sometimes. You may say, Doug, well, you're guessing. Well, I'm not going to build a theology around it. But where did he take it? He took it where none of us get to read about it. He took it to his father. Took it to God. Was Joseph confused through all of this? Do you think he was? You think he was a little confused how this was going to make the dreams get realized? I'm guessing he was. Number 5, we must apply ourselves to what is in front of us. Joseph carried God's blessings. He's in Potiphar's house, rose to prominence. He goes into the prison, rises to prominence. God's hand was on him. God's blessing was on him. Did he notice? I don't know. Do you notice that stuff? The question is, do we notice that God's hand is on us? Well, I can't do what Crystal does, come up here and sing and play the egg.
Talk about my egg.
We're talking about your egg, young lady. All right. You say, well, I can't do that. Well, if you and Crystal were exactly alike, one of you would be unnecessary. About that. We need to answer our call. That's what we do. Well, I want to be like that person. I want to be like that person. I want to have that person's gifts. No, we need to answer our call. We need to contribute what we contribute. I was an offensive lineman. I was a center. I snapped the ball. At least I was the only offensive lineman that got to touch it. All the glory guys in white shoes got to play with it. We need to do our job. We need to answer our call. Some of you are saying, well, you know, when I was younger this, when I was younger that, and I used to do this, and I used to do that. Here's the deal. Answer your call now. Well, I don't know what that is anymore. Well, put away your religion that told you what you used to supposed to do, and say, God, what do you want me to do now? Well, I don't know what's going to happen. Bingo! Wait a second, I'm supposed to make myself available to God? Yes. Did he notice that God's hand was on him? I don't know. Do we? Or could bitterness, anger, arrogance, or pride prevent us from seeing the talents, gifts, and abilities that we have? Or your friend had stopped going to church because something happened, or because they got bored, or whatever all else. We just need to answer our call. Number 6, we must not confuse our unmet expectations with a lack of concern from God. Just because we don't know what He's doing doesn't mean He is not at work. Because if we think we always need to know what God's doing, then who's God? Us. God, you did not consult me before my brothers sold me into slavery. I want you to know I'm a little upset about this. I don't know why you wouldn't confide in me. Because you would have run! Number 7, we must maintain a relationship with God, even or especially when we don't get it. Tell God you don't get it. Well, I can't tell God that. Why not? Do you think He's going to go, what? I have never been so insulted in my life. Your God's way too small then. We can get Him out of the box, out of the bag. We must maintain a relationship with God, even or especially when we don't get it. See, I don't know how to do that. Ask Him. Read the Word. Ask Him. Talk to God. God, I don't get it right now, and I'm struggling with this. Okay. Talk to Him. Talk to the God you're mad at. I don't care. Just talk to God. Ask. Number 8, we must forgive and press forward. We cannot let our unmet expectations and confusion drive us to sin and its consequences. Don't raise your hand on that one either. Don't let our unmet expectations and confusion drive us to sin and its consequences like Abraham did. But if we do, and if that's our history, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, who died on a cross to pay the price for our sin and for our failure. And not only do we need to learn to forgive others, we need to learn to forgive ourselves. The reason we sometimes don't forgive others is that we're handing judgment over to God. And we're afraid, no, that person has to pay. No, I want you to forgive them. Well, what they did is not okay. It didn't say it was okay. I need you to forgive them. I need you to put judgment into my hands. Yeah, but if I do that, you'll do for them what you did for me and let them off the hook. Oh, so that's the problem. Number 9, we must learn to walk in grace and favor and let God change us. The hardest thing of those 9 things is that last one. We must learn to walk in grace and favor and let God change us. Now, after each one of these, the question was, how do I do this? And the answer was, ask God. So if you want me to pray, I don't want you to pray if you've got some religious thing and you're stuck in your head. What do you want us to do? I want you to ask God. What, have a conversation with Him? Yeah. That doesn't always go well. I know. But it's always true. It's always life. Ask Him. Even if you're mad at Him. Even if you're disappointed. Even if you quit. Even if you went through all this stuff and go, I did exactly the opposite of everything Joseph did. Ask Him anyways. Ask Him when you're mad. Ask Him when you're hopeless. Just ask. God, I need you. I need you to touch me. I need you to reach me. I need you to help me see something. He may lead you someplace you've never been before. Read something you've never read before. See something you've never seen before. Experience something you've never experienced before. And He may leave you there in silence to contemplate, how do I really want to live my life? I don't know what He's going to do. But it's in our hands. That is the message of Joseph. That's the message of Joseph. If you're here this morning, it's like you bow your heads and close your eyes for a minute. This thing about forgiveness. If you're carrying some anger, some bitterness, some hatred, some fear, because of what happened in the past, you need to let it go. I just want to pray with you in just a second.